This was never about loyalty. Everyone has accepted the answer that feels most comfortable, that Darth Vader, broken and diminished on the lava shores of Mustafar, simply could not challenge the Emperor because he was no longer powerful enough. That the suit was a cage, that the injuries stole what might have been the most terrifying force in the galaxy. That Palpatine got lucky, in the most catastrophic way possible, and the machine that might have destroyed him was broken before it ever fully functioned. Almost no one stops to ask whether that explanation was constructed rather than discovered. Because the details, when you line them up without assuming the answer point somewhere darker, somewhere that reframes not just Vader's submission, but Palpatine's entire strategy across the final years of the Republic, the execution of Order 66, and the decision to leave Anakin Skywalker alive on Mustafar at all. The question was never whether Vader could have seized power. The question is whether he was ever allowed to become someone who would. The accepted narrative runs something like this. Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one prophesied to bring balance to the Force, destined to become the most powerful Jedi who ever lived. Palpatine spent over a decade carefully grooming him, cultivating trust, positioning himself as the one figure who could offer Anakin what the Jedi Order withheld. When the moment finally came when Mace Windu stood over a supposedly helpless chancellor in that rain-soaked office above Coruscant, Anakin made a choice. He intervened. He surrendered to the dark side, and in doing so, became Darth Vader. Then, Mustafar happened. The commonly held conclusion: Palpatine miscalculated. He sent Vader to slaughter the Separatist Council, and while that mission succeeded, Padme followed. Obi-Wan followed. A duel took place that the Emperor could not have anticipated, and when it was over, Anakin Skywalker lay burning at the edge of a lava river, more dead than alive, his potential functionally destroyed. The suit was a life support system, not an upgrade. Vader would never be what Anakin could have been. Palpatine, the story says, was left with a flawed apprentice, dangerous still, but diminished. No longer the weapon he had envisioned. And so the Empire was built on a compromise. An emperor who kept a broken enforcer at arm's length useful for terror, incapable of true succession while searching, always searching, for something better. It is a tidy explanation. It accounts for Vader's submission. It explains the Emperor's ongoing search for new apprentices throughout the Imperial era. It justifies why the most powerful dark side practitioner in the galaxy spent 20 years hunting dissidents rather than seizing the throne he should, by any reasonable calculation, have been able to take. It explains everything, which is exactly why it should be examined more carefully. The first crack is small, easy to miss if you are not looking for it. Palpatine knew Obi-Wan Kenobi would follow Padme to Mustafar. This is not speculation. By the time Vader left for Mustafar, Palpatine had already consolidated emergency powers. The Jedi Temple had been purged. Order 66 was executing across the galaxy. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin's master, the Jedi who trained him from childhood, the man who knew him better than anyone alive, had survived. Palpatine's intelligence apparatus, the same network that had penetrated the Jedi Order deeply enough to execute a simultaneous galaxy-wide purge, would have known that Kenobi lived. Would have known, almost certainly, that Padme Amidala was one of the few people Anakin might contact, or who might contact him. Would have understood that if Kenobi was looking for Anakin, Padme was the most obvious path. If that detail matters, and it does, then Palpatine sent Vader to Mustafar knowing that Obi-Wan Kenobi was likely to appear, which means someone decided not to warn Anakin. And that's only possible if the outcome on Mustafar, whatever form it took, was considered acceptable, or more than acceptable, in advance. The second crack concerns timing. Specifically, how long it took Palpatine to arrive after the duel. Vader was left burning on the lava shore for an extended period before Palpatine's shuttle arrived. In the aftermath of a galaxy-wide military coup, the most significant political event in a generation, the newly self-declared Emperor of the Galaxy found time to personally travel to a volcanic industrial planet, the Outer Rim, to retrieve one man. He did not send a medical team first. He did not dispatch a subordinate. He came himself, with no explanation of how he knew exactly where to go, how urgently to move, or what he would find when he arrived. The implication is hard to ignore. Palpatine was monitoring the situation on Mustafar in real time. If that is true, then the question becomes not just whether he knew Kenobi would appear, but whether he watched the duel, or some portion of it, and chose the precise moment of intervention. Not too early, not before the damage was done, after. The third crack is physical, and it is the one most often explained away: the suit. Medical technology in the Star Wars galaxy is extraordinary. Limb replacement is trivial. Anakin himself received a prosthetic arm years before Mustafar, and it was indistinguishable from the original. Bacta tanks can heal injuries that would be fatal in any other setting. The same civilization that can build a moon-sized battle station cannot construct a more functional life support system for its most important military asset. The suit Vader wore was not the best available technology. It was deliberately designed to be uncomfortable, restrictive, and limiting. This is confirmed, not implied, confirmed within canon. Palpatine designed the suit to cause pain. Constant, unrelenting pain, which serves two practical functions simultaneously. It ensures Vader cannot fully access the calm, focused state that maximizes force potential, and it ensures that Vader remains psychologically dependent on Palpatine as the only alternative to agonizing death. Here is where it becomes disturbing. If the suit was designed consciously, deliberately, to diminish Vader's force capabilities while maintaining his usefulness as an enforcer, then the injury on Mustafar was not a complication Palpatine had to work around. It was a condition he chose to preserve. The fourth crack requires understanding something about Sith doctrine that the surface narrative tends to minimize. The Rule of Two was not primarily about preventing overcrowding. It was a power management system. Two Sith, one to embody the power, one to crave it. The apprentice always scheming to surpass the master, always hunting for the angle, the leverage, the moment of weakness. This is not a flaw in the system, it is the feature. The tension is generative. It keeps both Sith sharp, but Palpatine was, by the time of the Empire's founding, genuinely old. He had spent decades in hiding, in disguise, operating within a political system designed to constrain exactly the kind of power he was accumulating. He was brilliant, patient, and extraordinarily dangerous, but he was also a man who had waited his entire adult life for this moment, and the body in which he would enjoy it was already deteriorating. An apprentice who was genuinely stronger, who had not been burned, not been broken, not been sealed inside a machine that perpetually drained him, would not be an asset to Palpatine's empire. He would be a timer. And if that's true, if Palpatine understood, in the hours after Mustafar, that a fully healed Anakin Skywalker was an existential threat rather than a loyal servant, then the question of why Vader never overtook the Emperor has a different answer than the one most people accept. It was not that Vader couldn't, it is that Vader was never allowed to recover enough to try. To understand what Palpatine built in the 20-year gap between Mustafar and the Battle of Yavin, you have to stop thinking about Vader as a failure and start thinking about him as a solution. Palpatine had a problem that predated Mustafar. The Chosen One prophecy, the one the Jedi had attached to Anakin Skywalker for over a decade, described an entity that would bring balance to the Force. Not to one side, not to the light. Balance. Palpatine was not stupid. He had studied Sith and Jedi lore more comprehensively than anyone alive. He knew what that prophecy represented. A Force user of unprecedented raw power, strong enough to disrupt the equilibrium that had defined the Force's relationship with the galaxy for millennia.
He had spent years turning that weapon toward his own ends.
But a weapon that powerful, fully functional, fully healed, fully trained, and existing within a power structure the Emperor alone controlled, that is not a comfortable position to occupy, even for Palpatine. The most likely explanation for Palpatine's choices after Mustafar is not that he was making the best of a bad situation. It is that Mustafar gave him exactly the outcome he needed at exactly the right moment to solve a problem he had been quietly carrying since the moment Qui-Gon Jinn brought a 9-year-old boy to the Jedi Council. Consider what Palpatine constructed in the immediate aftermath: a life support suit that ensures constant pain, limiting Force access and deepening psychological dependency. A military role that keeps Vader perpetually occupied with enforcement rather than strategy or self-development. A deliberate absence of any training in the deeper Sith arts that would allow Vader to grow beyond his current ceiling. A pattern documented across the Imperial era of presenting Vader with alternatives and watching how he responds, not to find a replacement for Vader, but to remind Vader that replacements are always possible. Every structure Palpatine built around Vader after Mustafar served one function: to preserve a level of power that was useful without becoming dangerous. That is not the behavior of someone managing a tragic accident. That is the behavior of someone maintaining a system they designed. But there is a layer beneath even this, and it is the one most people are least comfortable examining. Anakin Skywalker did not fall to the dark side because Palpatine was persuasive. He fell because Palpatine had spent years with extraordinary precision engineering the exact psychological conditions that would make the fall feel not just possible, but necessary. The isolation from the Jedi Council, the secret marriage and the fear of loss it generated, the repeated, subtle suggestions that the Jedi's rules were not protection but restriction, the cultivation of Anakin's pride, his impatience, his profound terror of powerlessness. Palpatine did not offer Anakin an alternative. He removed every other option first, then presented himself as the only door left standing. Which means that the version of Vader that emerged from Mustafar broken, traumatized, stripped of everything he had loved, was not an accident of circumstance. It was the end point of a carefully constructed emotional architecture designed to produce exactly one outcome: a dark side practitioner with immense raw power, deep psychological damage, and no structural ability to threaten the man who had engineered his destruction. The genius of it, and this is the part that reframes everything, is that it required no deceit on Mustafar itself. Palpatine did not need to arrange the duel. He did not need to ensure the injury. He only needed to have spent the previous decade building a man who, when the moment came, would make the choices that produced the result. It would explain why Palpatine, upon arriving at Mustafar, appeared so unsurprised.
There is one further dimension that the official story almost entirely ignores.
Vader knew. Not everything, not the full architecture of his own construction, but he knew enough. The Imperial era is filled with moments where Vader's behavior is explicable only if you accept that, on some level, he understood what had been done to him and had made a decision, conscious or otherwise, to remain within the system anyway. Why? The most unsettling possibility, because Vader's rage at Palpatine, however immense, was matched or exceeded by his rage at himself. Palpatine had engineered the fall, yes. But Anakin had made the choice. He had ignited the lightsaber. He had betrayed the Jedi. He had, by his own hand, whatever the manipulation involved, destroyed everything he had tried to save. A man who cannot forgive himself cannot act against the architect of his destruction without also acting against himself. The Emperor, in that psychological architecture, was not just a master, he was a mirror. As long as Vader served, he could defer the question of what he had done and why. The moment he moved against Palpatine, he would have to face it. which raises a darker possibility that the most effective chain Palpatine placed on Vader was not the suit, not the pain, not the diminished force potential. It was guilt. The consequences of this architecture did not end with Vader's submission. They shaped the entire trajectory of the Empire in ways that are only visible when you stop accepting the accident narrative. The Empire's strategic decisions for 2 decades make considerably more sense if you understand that its 2 most powerful figures were locked in a carefully maintained equilibrium of mutual dependency and mutual threat. Palpatine needed Vader as enforcer, as symbol, as deterrent. Vader needed Palpatine as the only structure through which his existence, however diminished, retained purpose. Neither could move against the other without destroying the balance that kept the Empire functional. This explains a pattern that otherwise seems inexplicable. Palpatine's repeated, almost casual suggestions to Vader that he might be replaced. The parade of potential new apprentices throughout the Imperial era, Inquisitors, dark side adepts, candidates Palpatine, showed Vader without ever quite committing to them. The conventional reading of this behavior is that Palpatine was genuinely searching for an upgrade. The more precise reading is that he was performing the search deliberately and continuously to ensure that Vader never stopped feeling expendable. A servant who believes he might be replaced at any moment does not plot. He performs. That is not the behavior of someone managing talent. That is the behavior of someone managing psychology. The consequences extend further into the decision, at the end of the saga, that Palpatine did not anticipate. Luke Skywalker. The Emperor's plan to turn Luke was a direct extension of the same architecture he had used on Anakin. The pressure, the manufactured crisis, the removal of alternatives. He expected Luke to respond as Anakin had, to break under the weight of love weaponized as fear. What he did not account for was the variable he had spent 20 years maintaining, Vader himself. In trying to break Luke, Palpatine used him as a mirror for Vader, showing Vader in real time what the pattern looked like from outside it. And in doing so, he triggered the one thing his entire architecture had been designed to prevent, a moment of self-recognition in Anakin Skywalker. Vader did not destroy Palpatine because he had found new power or new strategy or a moment of political opportunity. He destroyed Palpatine because watching Luke offered him something the past 20 years had denied him, the chance to see the manipulation clearly, without himself inside it. And yet, and this is the detail that rarely receives the attention it deserves, even that moment may not have been outside Palpatine's calculations.
Palpatine had spent decades studying Force prophecy.
He was the most knowledgeable dark side practitioner alive. The Chosen One prophecy, balance, not victory, not domination, balance, was one he had engaged with directly. He had tried to convert it into an instrument of Sith dominance, and the architecture he built around Vader was his attempt to neutralize a prophecy he could not simply ignore. But prophecies in this galaxy have a habit of completing themselves through the actions taken to prevent them. If Palpatine understood, on some level, that Anakin Skywalker would eventually destroy him, not could, would then everything he built afterward takes on a different color. Not the work of a man who believed he had escaped his fate, but the work of a man who was building as elaborate and beautiful a structure as possible, knowing that it would one day fall, and choosing to make the fall as controlled, as meaningful, and as final as the Force would allow. That doesn't prove design, but it explains why the alignment is unsettling. Because here is the detail that tends to slide past without catching. Palpatine did not survive the Death Star. In the moment that Vader chose Luke over the Emperor, both Sith died, one immediately, one shortly after from wounds sustained in the act. The Chosen One prophecy completed. Balance arrived not through Vader's domination or Vader's conquest, but through Vader's sacrifice, the precise form of ending that erases both dark side practitioners simultaneously, leaving behind only a son who fought without the dark side consuming him. The dark side did not lose because it was defeated. It lost because one of its two practitioners, at the critical moment, chose something else, which raises a question that the official story never quite answers. Was that a failure of Palpatine's architecture? Or was it the architecture completing its final function, the one it was always, at the deepest level, designed to perform? The suit kept Vader alive. The pain kept him dependent. The guilt kept him compliant. And none of it, not the engineering, not the psychology, not the 2 decades of careful maintenance, prevented the one outcome the Sith rule of two has always, eventually, produced. The apprentice exceeded the master, not through power, not through strategy, through a choice that no architecture, however sophisticated, could fully anticipate, the choice to feel something the dark side forbids. Vader did not overtake the Emperor through force. He overtook him through becoming, for one moment, something other than what he had been built to be. And if that was always where this was heading, if the Chosen One prophecy was always going to complete itself through precisely this mechanism, then the question worth sitting with is not whether Palpatine knew. The question is whether, in that final moment on the Death Star 2, watching his most carefully constructed instrument reach toward his dying son, Palpatine recognized what he was seeing, and whether, in whatever passed for his final thought, he found it familiar.
The injury on Mustafar did not stop Vader from overtaking the Emperor.
The man who designed the response to that injury did. And the question of whether those two things are separable, whether the injury and the response and the system that followed were always part of the same design, is one that the official story has never been asked to answer. Because the official story begins with an accident. And what happened on Mustafar was never an accident. If you want more Star Wars truths that are rarely examined, you know where to find them. One question before you go. If Palpatine had the power to heal Vader fully and chose not to, what else in this saga have we mistaken for tragedy that was actually strategy? Leave your answer below. I want to know what you think he planned. And if this kind of analysis is what you come here for, subscribe. More